right, everyone. Welcome to a video I'm pretty sure you all were waiting for me to eventually put up with my partner here. But first things first, I am the Dumble whose door is always open. Gandalf without the gray or the white because I'm all black. Jordy LaForge captaining this enterprise. And number one Flash stand, I am Left Eye Ego, guys. And I am joined with the cavalier of either watching cheesy and or crappy movies. I'm talking about an absolute maniac when it comes to these movies, either online or in the cinema. I've got my man, my homie, my guy with me, the Stuntman.
How you doing, man? What's up, E.G.O?
Doing good. How are we
All right.
doing?
Good, man. We're good, man. I was just sitting watching some Dark Side of the Ring
Oh,
before we
nice.
started
Okay.
before we started streaming.
But yeah, guys, we finally went to go see a movie last Friday that I've been waiting to see since 1993. I'm talking about the Flash movie from DC. And so we are giving you guys our honest to God review from what we've seen. We're going to say ahead of time that there are spoilers. And once the video is up, we're actually going to denote that in the, I guess, the chapters of this video. So I guess the things we wanted to start off with were some caveats. I know that Ezra Miller has had his own allegations publicly, and what we're trying to do is judging the movie based solely on the movie itself, separating the art from the artist in this regard. And I believe that there was something that Stuntman was telling me about just the projection so far from what we've seen box office wise. Like, how much did you say they've lost? Or they only made what? How much they make the opening weekend was how much?
I think you said 50. It might have been 50 or
Yeah,
65 million, something like that.
yeah, very, very low, 50 to 55 million. I know it's probably projected to lose over $150 million, if
They
not
said
more.
schedule.
What?
They said up to $350 million they're
Woo!
expecting as a
Woo!
loss.
Yeah, so that brings us to our second caveat. We're not basing it just off of like, hey, is it a big office hit or is it a flop? We're just saying, hey, based on what we saw, these are our honest review of the movie. All right. So again, we are going to be judging off of the casting, plot, pacing, the CGI, as well as the cameos that we're seeing. And again, we'll tell you when there are spoilers. When this movie is up or when this video is up. And we are also going to be judging not based off of the 1 to 5 stars. We don't do that over here. We do 1, 2, 5 egos, y'all. So with that, let us get started with the essential plot of the movie. I'm going based off of what you would have seen if you just saw the previews and not actually been in theater. The premise of the movie is that Barry Allen's having a really tough time dealing with the murder of his mother and the incarceration of his father. And so he actually tries to go back in time to change the fate of his mother and exonerate his father. But by doing so, causes quite the, I guess, the ripple or butterfly effect. Several things have changed. Bruce Wayne that he's used to is not the Bruce Wayne that he meets, and he actually winds up meeting himself as well and has to deal with the fallout of saving his mother. So with that general premise out of the way, we're going to kind of jump into the casting, and I'm going to bring this up now so we can actually see the casting as is. All right, Stuntman, you see all that? All
I sure
right.
do.
All right, so we had Ezra Miller as Barry Allen, Flash. Sasha Calle was Supergirl. Ben Affleck played, I guess, Batman Prime. Michael Keaton was Batman, I guess, secondary. We had, again, Fiore Iwe from Man of Steel was in it. We also had Michael Shannon reprise his role as Zod. Who else do we have? We had Jeremy Irons was in here as Alfred as well. So we had several big name castings in this movie. And so based off of the casting that, we were shown or what you would have seen in the previews, Stuntman, what do you give the casting for this movie?
So I think initially I was going to give it out of 5 egos. I was initially going to give it a 3.5, but
Okay.
I really did enjoy seeing some of the cameos, and then also I did enjoy seeing Sir Michael Keaton as Batman again. So I mean, that was just blew me out of the water. It was great just to get those old 1990 vibes, and even the music, the soundtrack, and when he shows up in the Batcave, it got me really hyped, and I was happy to see that. That Batman is still appreciated in the DC universe. So I mean, I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5, but I really
Okay.
enjoyed it. But the only thing is, with Ezra Miller, I never really thought of him as, a really great superhero guy. Like when he was with the Justice League, I thought he was more obnoxious
Right.
than, you know, than all the other. But I guess that's his role because he's probably he's the youngest. And he just figured out he's a new superhero, but he was really obnoxious. And in this movie, you get double the obnoxious. So,
I
you know,
understand. I understand.
so I'd give it a solid
Go ahead.
4.
Solid 4. Okay. You know what? I'm
Solid 4.
actually I'm gonna give it a 3.5, and I'll tell you why. The casting for who they got was actually pretty great. However, you feel about Kara Zor-El versus instead of having your Henry Cavill as Superman, so having Supergirl instead of Superman. Everyone that was generally cast did a great job of playing the role that they were assigned. The only problem that I actually had was with I guess it was the casting of Iris West, which was Kiersey Clemens. It's not necessarily a knock against casting and Iris West, but the problem is like there was nothing there. She didn't have a personality to me. She was just there. You know what I mean? I guess that was
Yeah.
the weird thing. If you see the Snyder cut, she's in the Snyder cut as Iris West, and it's like, well, okay, you're gonna get a lot of flack for doing a race swap, but at least give the person you're race swapping the personality that would say, I can see why they chose you and you were the best one for the job and not just trying to check off a box. With Kiersey Clemens, it's like she was just there. Like she could have been anybody, and her personality would not have really affected the outcome of the movie. It's like, why is this person supposed to be Barry Allen's love interest? The Iris West that you see in the comics and even in some of the TV shows is someone that's kind of like Lois Lane a little bit. In touch with everything, on the boots kind of reporter, and it's supposed to be the love interest of a guy that's kind of out of step with a lot of things.
But
And
I
she
think they
kind of
just
like
threw her in there. They just threw her in there.
and that's what it seemed like. They just threw her in there, and it's like she's supposed to be his grounding or his lightning rod that keeps him like on the ground and present. And it's like she was just there. So I'm taking away the 4 and giving it a 3.5 because of that. It's the casting, but it's also the characterization, I guess, along with the casting. Everyone else played the role. Like, okay, I can see why you're the Flash. I can tell you're a Batman. I can tell that you're Supergirl. It's like, wait, you're Iris West? Nah, get out of here. Nah, I don't believe that at all. So I'm gonna go with 3.5 egos on the casting for that. Next, we're gonna go ahead and talk about the general plot. We'll try to go with what we saw, what we were showing in the preview, as far as the plot's concerned. Hey, he tries to go back in time to save his mother from her demise, but winds up completely messing with, I guess, we'll talk about either the timeline or the dimensions or whatever. And so, as far as the plot's concerned, what did you think of that?
So the plot, I think it had okay.
Without trying to give a spoiler at this point, we're gonna save when we talk about the cameos and I guess why the movie made sense to us. We'll do spoilers at that point. But as far as the plot that you were shown, like, what did you think in terms of 1 to 5 egos?
Honestly, I think after Marvel had just like masterfully done the time, the going back in time and starting the multi-universe. I mean, they did it perfectly. It seemed just a lot rushed. Obviously, DC is going to go a whole different way with James Gunn and everything that's being put into all the movies. But I mean, it was a good premise. I liked it. It was fun. I didn't have a whole lot of expectations for it, but just kind of going on and seeing what was going on in the movie, I felt like I'd already seen it over the last 5 or 6 years
Years.
with Marvel, and
Got
and
it.
I'll tell you honestly, like it is kind of like you're getting some. I'm getting fatigued of it, because it's not just Mortal Kombat's doing time travel now. Marvel's been doing
That's
it.
true. That's true.
So it's
It's a
just
tricky thing. Yeah.
Transformers is they're not doing time travel, but it's like you're going back in time to get the original stories. So I mean, it just and it sucks because the Flash had so much potential, you know, and the premise was good. It was a good premise, but it was just kind of just a little like, it's been overplayed a little bit.
Okay. I will say if you were trying to compare to anything else you've seen, like, Marvel or like you said, Mortal Kombat, or even the Flash TV show.
Sorry, that's cheeky. Sorry, mom.
Shiggy makes
It's okay, mama.
a cameo. I would
Sorry, G.
say
Come on.
it's the plot is a 3 when you compare it to other like Marvel movies, because at least they kind of built you up to the concept of time. Whereas if we're just saying solely the movie as itself, I mean, plot wise, it's a 4 for me, because it's like, well, you go back for a singular event. With Marvel, with the end, I guess the end game was like, well, hey, we need to go back in time to get everything set, to set everything back, but we got the stones and we're going to bring everyone back from 5 years ago to now. Like, that was convoluted for me, so go
Yeah.
ahead.
So
I
the
think
thing is so Marvel, they did the time travel with Endgame and Infinity War. Like they brought it into discussion. They did the multiverse with a whole different cast, which was Doctor Strange, and then
right.
the Scarlet Witch. So I mean, they didn't force it all into one.
That's fair,
As
but they
while
had
I was
time.
watching while I was watching the Flash, I felt like they were putting both of these storylines into one big storyline.
I will say that I might give it a 4 because it was a concentrated and very selfish thing to do.
Mhm.
Whereas Marvel was trying to make it this great thing for everyone, trying to save everyone from 5 years ago, but we're still going to save like Tony's daughter, but we're bringing everyone in. It's like, I mean, I get it. It's incredibly altruistic, but wasn't really realistic for me. If you go back
Sure.
in time, you would do something strictly to benefit yourself. So plot wise, it made sense more for me to see the Flash do that than something like Endgame or an Infinity War, because it wasn't completely altruistic. It was like, no, I'm doing this for me. It's a side effect that it's a side benefit that my dad actually gets exonerated from prison. My mom lives, but I'm doing it because I want to save my family. So I'll
Sure.
give it a 4 because it made the most sense. You know what I mean? Like, if you think about it, Wonder Woman never had to leave Themyscira. Not really. She just had a burgeoning sense of adventure, so she did it. Bruce, it's a whole guilt thing. So, but if you think about those other heroes, then all of them don't really have a reason to have to do it. Flash has a reason that he feels he has to do it and does it, and has to deal with the fallout. So for that, I'm actually going to give it 4 egos on the plot.
And I think
So
I'm with you on that.
yeah, 4 egos. Okay, I can work
Four
with that.
egos.
All right. So as far as the pacing of the movie, what were your thoughts in terms of like I guess the split between action and dialogue?
Honestly, the action was like it was. I love that initial scene with the action and
Oh yeah,
the comedy. It was awesome. Like it was really, and it sets you up for, man, this movie's going to be awesome. And then it kind of doesn't really slow down,
not really.
but
No.
no, it doesn't really slow down. But I would have wanted. I was actually hoping for more superheroes to come in like out of nowhere, like actually fighting. But it was really good, man. I really liked the pace. It was fun. It was really
It
fun.
was.
And I think the fact that I didn't have a lot of expectations and I didn't know a lot about the Flash or Reverse Flash, I thought it was like super interesting to me to see like
Right.
in the comic books, this was a real thing.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I do like that aspect of it too. I mean, for 2 hours and 20 minutes, it didn't feel like 2 hours and 20 minutes.
No. Mm-mm.
The action scenes were great. The opening scene of him, being in action and showing you and seeing what he sees and having to deal with the side effects of being so fast and having to kind of temper his powers in certain situations was actually really good. And when they slowed down,
I think it was cool. Like you see him in the beginning and he's fighting just like he was in Justice League and And then you see like the background story, like they fit in his origin story is within this movie. So like you didn't know, I didn't know how Flash became Flash. And then now they
Really?
pretty much, I had no idea. And then
Oh
they
wow.
walk you through it step by step, not just with the younger Flash, but with the older Flash. So I mean, I liked it. It was good.
Okay. So I mean, so what would you give it then for the pacing for you?
Man, I'd give it a 4.5. 4.5.
All right. You know what? I may not go as high as you. I'll probably go with a 4, just because I don't know what could have made it better in terms of pacing for me, because they fit a lot into 2 hours and 20 minutes. What I thought, so I would still give it a solid 4, because again, once they stopped, when there wasn't action, there was strictly dialogue. The
Hmm.
dialogue was very specific to tell you exactly what's happening at the next points. Like there weren't any lulls or low points. They were just like, hey, the action stopped, but this is the dialogue that's going to move us to the next point of action. So I had no problem with that at all.
With
Now,
the plot though, like you, since you know so much about the Flash and you're a huge Flash fan, like how did you feel about how they did his origin and then like how they took bits and pieces of like the comics into that movie and made it all into one?
let's talk about it. So every other movie character in DC, when they did their movie, got
Hmm.
an origin story.
Sure.
Even if you're trying to do Batman v Superman, they still spent a solid 2.5 to 3 minutes on Bruce's origin story, because we already saw Man of Steel's origin story before that. Then after that,
Martha.
oh god, don't start. And even when Wonder Woman had her solo movie after the cameo, she still got her origin story. Hell, Aquaman, even after being introduced in Justice League, got his um,
Origin.
origin story after that. So the Flash movie that you're introducing me to, you can't show me his origin story, because the comic book that it's based off of is based after the origin story, way after. When it came to just not having the ability to do a true origin story for him, not in any way introducing us to his rogues galley, Captain Cold, Boomerang, Mirror Master, Heat Wave, hell, even Reverse Flash to that extent. How do you do a movie where you have to not tell the origin story, and the origin of your story you're telling me is based when he alters the past? I thought they did a really good job of explaining it kind of secondhand through the other Barry Allen that you meet when he changes the past. So that's why I said, even doing all that, you didn't ruin the pacing either, which is
Hmm.
very difficult in my mind to do. So that's why I have to give the pacing a 4 on there for that. Now, the big problem that a lot of people did have, and a lot of things with people that saw the movie, was the CGI. And so, how would you rate the CGI that you saw based on the movie that we based the CGI that you saw? What would you give it?
So, you know what? I didn't see a lot of issues with the CGI, but I
Hmm.
also didn't. I didn't. You know what? I'm very like, yeah. I can't pay attention to everything, so I know a lot of the issues with the CGI was like in the chromosphere or wherever he was, whatever that thing was
Oh
called,
yeah, the
and like
Chrono Bowl.
Chrono Bowl, like in the
Terrible name
stadium,
for it. Yeah,
and like a lot of it was like different parts of upper in the screen where I really wasn't paying attention. And
true.
and from what I've been seeing is that DC was saying they did that on purpose. Like you're looking from
His
inside of the
point of
chrono,
view.
yeah. So it's supposed to look like that, but I can definitely see like, hey, that sounds like a weak excuse for going half
It
hearted on the
on
CGI.
the CGI.
Yeah,
That's what I thought. So what would you give it then for what you saw?
I'd give it a 3. I'd give it a
3.
3.
Okay. All right. So the weird thing is, I'm gonna have to give it a 3 as well, because when they first show you, when they first show him going into, I guess, the Speed Force, it actually looks really cool. I'm not gonna spoil any. I'm not gonna spoil the illustration of it, but it looks cool. It's when he stops and then you start seeing all these realities, and he shows all these different versions of things. That's when the CGI looked terrible. The best way I can explain this is when everyone saw the Mummy, when we first saw the CGI of the actual Mummy for what was it, 1998, 99. You're like, yo, this is really advanced. And so when the Scorpion King was set to drop, or the Mummy 2 with the Scorpion King in it, you were like, I cannot wait to see what the Dwayne the Rock Johnson is going to look like as the Scorpion King. And then you saw the Scorpion King. You're thinking like, am I playing like PlayStation 1 or even Nintendo 64 WWE Raw right now? What kind of graphics are these? What kind of blocky ass uh
Goldeneye, Goldeneye.
golden? Oh yeah, what kind of GoldenEye graphics are these? And so that's the best way that I can actually explain the CGI to you guys without giving the movie away. I have to give it a 3 because up until that point, or when they were trying to show different versions of the CGI, it looked pretty decent. It was just when they tried to show these realities that he could see, the representation was awful. The CGI
But
that we see in some of the cameos that we'll discuss, we'll talk about that specifically. But it was just that just the him seeing the alternate realities. That CGI was awful. Like I give it, you know what? Yeah, I would say it mustered a 3. Just it was a 3.5 to a 4, but that terrible visualization gave it a 3. What do you got?
but I think it's probably a win for DC because if they would have gone back in and fixed a lot of that CGI, it probably would have cost millions and millions more dollars. So that would have been more and more of a loss for
So
them.
this is the problem though. There are easier ways to represent um time or going back into it with just showing this a screen with the actual scene. Like you could have shown him running, and then off to the side you see like just like you would, it's almost a TV screen of like all the things that have been happening with just literal scenes from the Snyder cut, Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Wonder Woman, hell, even like Superman 1 or 2, like Keaton's Batman. You could have shown stuff like that as he's running, and he just basically just sticks his head in the screen, and then he sees like you put like a little CGI bubble of his head, but the scene is literally a shot for shot of the Snyder cut. It's not hard to do. I just like wasting money on CGI when you literally have the film right there.
Yeah.
It was easier. You should have just done that instead of just trying to show these visual models and representations. And so that'll actually bring us to, guys, the part we're going to wind up spoiling, which are first we're talking about cameos. The second thing we're going to talk about also is why the movie at least made sense to me, and I'll get Stuntman's opinion on it as well. But as far as the spoilers that you saw, from 1 to 5 egos, spoil it away right here, sir. What do you give the cameos?
I loved it, man. I loved it. I give it 5 just because, I'd never seen, like Christopher Reeves as like, in a movie, like as Superman. I hadn't seen Nicolas Cage. I had no idea, he was a Superman at any point or even thought of as a Superman. It was cool to see Adam West as Batman. Oh man. I loved it because Christopher Reeves, he's not here anymore, right?
No, he died years ago.
And
Yeah.
then, Adam West just recently passed. I mean, it was cool. And then what I was hearing is that like that Superwoman or Supergirl that was with um, uh,
Christopher Reeves.
Christopher Reeves, like they were never actually in a movie together. So they made it
No.
like look like they were like, like they were at one movie. It was pretty cool, man.
Yeah, and so that was that was a CGI point. So basically, what happens is once Barry gets into the Speed Force, he starts running, and it makes this kind of like a dust bowl in a stadium. And so as he the actual what would look like crowds in a stadium are these alternate realities. And as he runs, the realities fold in on each other as he gets closer and closer to the one event that he wants to get to. And he winds up doing it so much that it causes like a convergence. So planets are actually running into each other, exploding, and things like that. But as they get closer and closer, he can actually see who's on the planet. So you see Jay Garrick's Flash with the helmet and everything, which I thought was really cool.
Man. That was awesome.
They show you, and again, all of this is CGI. They show you a CGI version of Christopher Reeve Superman with Supergirl. You see a CGI version of Nicolas Cage in Death of Superman Lives, which was awesome. And he's fighting against Brainiac as the, I guess, the spider. and which was cool because, guys, The Death of Superman Lives was a movie that was actually completely scrapped. You got to watch the documentary about it. And if you see it, the person that had the right Superman at the time wanted Brainiac to be represented as some kind of spider. And the thing is, because the movie failed, they still had the spider left over to use, and that's the spider that you actually see in Wild Wild West. So the other cameo that was on there, I think, was Adam West. Was that CGI or was that like a real shot for shot from
No,
the
that
movie?
was the CGI. No,
Yeah. What?
yeah, it was CGI.
It was CGI, right?
Hmm.
And so I think that was all the ones that we saw that were the CGI cameos. I will say, as far as CGI cameos, it was cool to see them. I mean, I know that neither one of them were alive, so it makes sense. The other cameo that I really, you know what, AJ's gonna go fucking nuts when he hears this, but I actually like the fact that George Clooney is the Bruce Wayne that we see at the end. I'm not gonna lie. It's weird. I didn't know why I was like, huh. I was like, you know what, that actually makes sense. The only thing that could have beat that is if Kevin Conroy, rest his soul, the voice of Batman, were the Bruce Wayne. And the thing is, I know Kevin Conroy died like last November, so you could have had him in this movie. Like if you'd have said you got me Kevin Conroy, I'm making this thing like well over a 5 in terms of egos. But as far as the I guess the use of CGI to kind of bring these people back for the cameos, excuse me, I thought it was a 4. You know what I mean? It was a pretty solid 4 with the cameos that they did give us. Um, Michael Keaton did an absolutely fantastic job as Batman. There's a scene in which he drops down and uses his cape to like actually to block the bullets, the automatic gunfire again that goes against the Flash and Supergirl, and so it was very reminiscent of Tim Burton and him doing so. So he had his screen time and he took full advantage of it. So it was awesome. So I'll give the cameos that we did see. I'll give it a 4. Yeah. Again, like I said, I was really surprised about George Clooney being in it. And if you told me that this is the Batman moving forward and they're going to do Brave and the Bold, and you tell me that George Clooney is Batman, in a weird way, I might be okay with it. AJ's gonna go fucking nuts. I don't know why I feel this way, but looking, I'm like, it works. I guess it would work. So, what did you give the cameos on your end, man?
Well, man, I love Michael Keaton as the Batman, and then Adam West. I used to love watching that show back when I was a kid. He's one of my favorite Batman, dude. Awesome. Yeah, I give it a 5, man, just because it was really cool, man. I really enjoyed it. That was like a real surprise to me that they were going to actually bring these worlds and converge.
True, true. All right, man. I will give you that. All right. So the thing that I wanted to talk about was why the movie made absolute sense to me. I know that people were saying it's either contrived, it's a mess, it's trying to do too much, it's this or it's that. Actually, it made sense to me, and I can again, it's spoilers for this section, but I can actually tell you why. So the first thing everyone, I guess, was up in arms about was the casting of Sasha Calle as Supergirl, right? So if Andy Machete has to make this movie and he doesn't have access to Henry Cavill, and you're not sure if you want to recast him because you don't know if he's going to come back, the easiest thing to do would be to actually put Supergirl in, right? I know that everyone was up in arms about not only the casting, but the fact that she had dark hair and not blonde hair. So the thing is that, again, if we're looking at comic books for the most part, well, actually, I'll skip it. I'll tell you this first part first. When you saw Superman 2 with Christopher Reeve, and they introduced Zod and the other Kryptonians, everyone was kind of like a Vulcan from Star Trek. Everyone looked the same, dark hair, blue eyes. So it made it seem like, okay, well, it's a mono ethnic race of Kryptonians. Everyone looks the same, and everyone was okay with that. And so I think that even in her original comic form, she had dark hair. And so I think someone decided to change it in the 80s to make her blonde haired and blue eyed. And then the movie Supergirl came out in the 80s right after that. And so ever since then, it's been like, oh, well, Kara's blonde haired and blue eyed. However, if you make this a movie and you're like, oh well, I was Kal-El's cousin and you're blonde haired, blue eyed, people that may not know the lore be like, really? I mean, like how would that work if y'all are cousins? Are y'all like first cousins? If you're second cousins, then like I guess I get it, but it would be easier to explain if like, oh, they technically have darker hair and maybe the blue eyes going for them. So okay, so hey, it's a mono-ethnic race, right? So I was actually okay with Kara Zor-El being Supergirl, and they even qualified her power set when they were saying that I don't know how long she'd been in this containment field, but the scene you see where she's fighting the people in Siberia, the scene you see like right after that, she just collapses because she hasn't been in the sun, obviously. And so even for all her fighting scenes, she's still pretty weak and she can't really fight all that long before she either gets tired or overpowered. So I was actually okay with that. You got anything that you want to talk about why it made sense to you before I go to the next point?
So and the whole thing is I kind of get why they were doing this because they're starting over from
Mm-hmm.
DC started all the way fresh. So I see
Right.
what they were trying to do. And I think an issue, like I think with the casting, I think the main issue was Ezra, wasn't it? Like that
I
was the
think
main drama with it. But I
I
mean, I think they were all casted great. I loved that Supergirl with dark hair. I think we've seen enough, blonde hair, blue eye, superheroes.
right.
I mean, I think it fit great. Well, she even had an accent, right?
I think so.
She
I
did
guess the
have an
only
accent in the movie.
she did. I guess the only weird part was the fact that I don't know how long she was in that containment field and she was in Siberia, but she knew, even though she had an accent, she knew perfect English.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? I would have loved to have a scene where she's speaking Kryptonian
that'd be
at the
sweet.
beginning. Right. Like, and then she gets closer and closer to English, which is always my problem. They tell me someone's alien or foreign. How is it that you've lived in one area your entire life where you speak a specific language, but the first person you meet, perfect English? Show me her getting there. Like, show me that she can't speak English first. Like, she goes from Kryptonian to, what you call it, maybe Latin, because that could be close then to maybe Spanish or Italian, and then she eventually gets to English, and even the English with accent. I would have liked to have seen that, but I get what you're saying. Yeah, she did have an accent, so that kind of helped. Um, I guess the other thing that I really appreciated was the fact that, and even it's going to seem blasphemous to Marvel stands and people that are hard on Marvel, but the line in Spider-Man is with great power comes great responsibility, right? However, what power does Spider-Man have? To me, that's truly like a cataclysmic event. He's not smarter than Reed Richards. He is resourceful, but not maybe necessarily as resourceful as Tony Stark. He pretty much does glorified parkour, and he's always constantly suffering. You know what I mean? I
I,
guess his big come up is getting married and having Mayday Parker, his daughter, or being a part of the Fantastic Four. Go ahead. What are you saying?
well, I think the main thing about Spider-Man is that he's your neighborhood Spider-Man. So he's kind
Right.
of like he's the superhero that's down to earth. Like he's not like
That
uh
and that is fine. That's
like
what I mean. Like he's like, hey, with great power comes great responsibility in these streets.
but
Okay,
he also so I mean he tries to relate to us because I guess
that is
us as
and,
regular people.
and that is fine. And that's always been Marvel's modus operandi.
Hmm.
How do my struggle is with people, like treating people the way I'd want to be treated, golden rule type stuff, right?
Sure.
DC, on the other hand, is about straight up embracing godhood. And the thing is that I haven't seen, to me, a true version of with what great power comes great, I will say, restraint on top of the responsibility. They try to show that with Marvel's Endgame, whatever, but that took a team to do that. Flash in this movie is one guy having so much power that he can go back in time and reset reality, or actually live in any reality that he chooses to, or seemingly destroy it. And they actually showed you the fallout of using your power without having restraint or responsibility. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And even when they show you you guys wind up seeing, again, spoilers, you wind up seeing, I guess it's the Dark Racer or the Death Racer. And you find out that there's a point in the movie in which Kara Zor-El gets stabbed by Zod, and he collects the genetic material that he needs to reform Krypton, because in this reality, the key to the DNA was actually in Kara Zor-El and not Kal-El, which makes sense because they say that Kara was sent before to make sure that he'd be okay. So you put the treasured possession on the bodyguard and not the actual, like, the last son of Krypton. Make perfect sense to me. But when this happens and the Barry Allen with the longer hair sees it, he goes back and tries to fix it. And he keeps going back and back and back and back. And in every version of him going back, Kara Zor-El dies. And so, the Barry that has a short hair says, look, maybe this world was destined to die. Maybe we can't do anything about it. Maybe it's kind of predetermined that this is the outcome. And so the Flash the Longer doesn't really want to accept it until you see the Death Racer. And then the Death Racer shows up and he's like, I was you that didn't stop trying to fix it. And he looks incredibly scarred and malformed and everything. But it shows you the fact that, hey, he tells both the short hair and longer hair Barry Allen that, like, hey, you short hair Barry Allen, you're the only reason that this keeps happening. Because you stepped foot into my reality, you messed things up. And I've tried so many different permutations of fixing this that the only constant that screwed everything up is you. So you got to go. And so you're like, damn, that's the totality of actually using your power without restraint. That you mess that your mere existence creates this actual paradox. And I think that without being able to explain the reversed Flash in this movie, that's the best way to explain that this is the villain of the movie. It's really himself. Because technically, if you can run the speed of light, who's really going to stop you? Like, outside of maybe magic, and you never introduced me to that. So his own enemy technically is himself. And I actually like them showing that, because that's something that the casual moviegoer can understand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Outside of that, I thought the actual, like, there's a Back to the Future reference on there that Eric Stoltz was Marty McFly in Back to the
Yeah.
Future, which you were
Yeah.
telling me is actually true. Because how did you say that?
They said that they did about 3 weeks of filming with that. It was the Eric Stoltz before.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and they said the reason why they replaced him is because the guy was taking the role too serious. Like, it's supposed to be like a comedy with a teenager. So after about 3 weeks of filming, so there's film somewhere of Back to the Future with that guy, and then they replaced him with Michael J. Fox, which is crazy.
It is.
That
It
it's a
is.
real
But it was
thing.
like, it was a real thing, and they actually included it in the movie, which is kind of cool. It's like, it's kind of paying homage to this kind of movie, kind of making things all topsy turvy while actually citing a real event. So I really, that's why it made sense to me, because of what they had to work with and what they were given and what they used and how they tried to explain the Speed Force and Barry Allen's power set. The best way I can kind of explain this, and we talked about it in our live stream, was the fact that it was like if Barry Allen met Wally West and tried to mentor him while still telling us that this is Barry Allen's origin story. Stuntman, thank you so much for joining me today and actually letting us review this movie. Again, throw out the socials, good sir, where people can find you either on the sticks or the gram.
All right, man. You can catch me at on the sticks at Stuntman 0311. And then you can catch me on Instagram at LRay0311. Thank you, man.
Hell
Thank you for having me
yeah.
on. Thank you for having me on the stream, man.
Bro, it's always great having you on, especially when I actually want to see the movie you're trying to get me to watch. Okay. anyway, anyway, guys, we'll catch you later. But for the Stuntman and for myself, E.G.O, we are out.